This is the DRS train.
Welcome to the DRS Train podcast. This service is the 2024 season preview. I'm your driver, Peter Brook, and your conductors today are Nav F1 and returning guest, the casual F1 fan. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Peter. Very much looking forward to previewing the 3 Formula Series this year.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me on again. Finally, let's get back to talking about Formula 1 in 2024 and forwards, There's been too much of 2023 and far too many conspiracies until now.
Yeah, fully agree with you. And honestly, just going into 2024, I was scared it would be very boring. But obviously, with the news we've had in Jan and Feb, it has become much more interesting to think about 2024. With all the contracts expiring, with Lewis leaving, that just gives us a lot to think about. So let's just address the main thing firstly. Do we think Red Bull is still on top? Do we think they still have the same advantage as before? And what do you think is going to happen to the midfield? So, firstly, just how many races is Verstappen going to win, you guys think, Peter?
Peter, you go ahead first.
Yeah, minimum 15, but I don't think that's going to be too difficult for him to do. I mean, we saw he won 19 last year. 24 races. I feel like it would be difficult to beat that, but at the same time, there's no reason to suggest he couldn't. So we could see a 20 wins in a season from him. I still don't think they're going to win every race, because even if we assume that they have no races where the car breaks down or the drivers don't make their own errors, they still need to look at Singapore because that was a big weak point last year. So they do still have an issue with combining, I suppose, warm track temperatures with low speed corners for whatever reason. But I don't. Yeah, I think it's gonna basically be picking up where we left off, and it's gonna be a very easy fourth title for Max.
Okay, so I think it's such a depressing way to start the video, honestly. Yeah, I think Red Bull is going to win. I really don't think there are too many doubts about that. How many wins Max Verstappen is going to have? I think this is the most interesting bit because there are two chains of thoughts. One is that Red Bull is going to replicate whatever happened in 2023 and it will be business as usual and they get back to doing the whole pretty much making making everyone submit to their domination just like they did last season. I think it's going to be a bit different. I think let's get a few things out of the way first. Right now, after preseason test, it does appear they have around half a second over the rest of the field. Almost every publication has gone with that. Having said that, these regulations they are supposed to be prescriptive in nature, and at some point in time, I'm just being optimistic. I feel the field will start to close, and we will see the whole the word that is often used, diminishing returns. I think we'll see that, and yeah, I'm hoping Max does not get more than 15 wins because that would be a very boring season, to be honest. But yeah, that's where we stand.
Before going into the upper midfield, just have to talk about his teammate for a bit. Do you guys think, bluntly, Sergio Perez is winning another race in Formula One before he retires?
He could win one this year. I mean, obviously last year he won 2 races. I mean, both of them were kind of because of Max's misfortune, because he only won in Jeddah because Max had the gearbox failure in quali and then came close to beating him in the race when he otherwise would have won it if he'd started from pole. And then in Baku, Max got screwed by the safety car, but then even after that, he still couldn't catch up to him. There has to be one where things just don't quite happen for Max, or maybe Checo has a good weekend. There aren't many examples because even in the Hamilton dominance, Bottas would still get a couple of wins. In the Schumacher dominance, Barrichello would get a couple of wins. There's always going to be at least one where it's a bit more even, you would think. Probably early in the season because that tends to be how it is. They start strong and then just get weaker, and while their opponent starts weak and gets stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he'll get a win. again, there are 24 races. Even a clock is correct. Even a broken, the saying that goes, a broken clock is correct twice a day. So Checo will have his day in he will have his day in the sun. That's not much of a doubt right now, because look, at the end of the day, when the car is this good, even if you are mediocre, you tend to find yourself in good positions, and there might be a day when Max has a bad day, and there will be Checo to pick up the pieces. So yeah, will he win a race? Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah, because what we got last year is that even when Max wasn't there, so for example in Singapore, Sergio wasn't there to pick up the pieces. And you know what? One thing I've been thinking about, especially with what you said, Casual, on in terms of how this grid is meant to be close in nature if everyone gets it right. Ideally, in 24, if the upper midfield closes in, we wouldn't be too far from what we see in Formula 2 in terms of spec series, in the sense that Formula 2 is meant to be a spec series, but as we know, there are setups that come into play. There are circuits that suit some cars more than others, and then it's the
Yeah,
drivers who really shine. And in the upper midfield, going into that part of the grid, I think that's exactly what we're going to see, because maybe there's going to be a big difference between Mercedes, Aston Martin, McLaren, but I feel like they're going to be extremely close. And what we're going to see is individual talent really shine through, and the faster, like basically who will qualify P5 or P4 in a
yeah,
weekend might just be the quickest driver on that day among those three teams, or Ferrari if Ferrari is not clear second.
yeah.
And secondly, I feel like this could be perfect in terms of what is at play for 2025, which is there will probably be a free Red Bull seat and probably be a free Mercedes seat. This year has become interesting because all of a sudden the midfield drivers are like, oh, there's an opportunity here. I might finally be getting my big move. Albon, where does he go? Gasly, is he looking at Merck and Red Bull? Ocon as well, is he looking at Merck? So you've got all those drivers who might be in very close competition on the track, but also off track in terms of who gets the seats. Well, recent news suggests that Alpine might be the slowest, which would be absolutely farcical, by the way.
The blueprint on how not to run an F1 team. I think that's the title of my next video. It's basically Alpine and the 10 mistakes that the team has made. I'm currently working on it. And it's, after a point, you start. I think if you guys follow cricket to an extent, Alpine is the Shahid Afridi of cricket. Shahid Afridi is a Pakistani cricketer, plenty of talent, everything he had everything. He's retired now, but you saw the temperament and basically foolishness limit his career and the kind of achievements that he had. That's basically Alpine, because it has the resources. I mean, Renault is a public funded company, right? So money should not be a concern. After that, in terms of Enstone actually producing great cars, there's everything in place. But then you have the entire outfit since I think 2016, 2017 when they came back. It's been rubbish. Ever there's no other word for it. It's absolute rubbish. How do you remove someone who Otmar came in 2020, 2022. He said that within the next 5 years, Alpine will be able to contend for titles, and between that, he set a few milestones as well. 2023, he expected to fight for podiums. 2024, he expected to fight for wins. In 2023, Alpine got a couple of podiums. So Otmar kind of ticked the checkbox, but well, he's out. And they've replaced him with the man who's responsible for the poor Renault power unit. Bruno Famin is actually the one who led the whole power unit operation, and we see where, where the whole operation is right now. And they've replaced Otmar with him. And just look at the results. Where's the logic in all of it? I still cannot find it. What a complete joke.
The recent Drive to Survive season 6, if you're an Alpine fan and you actually want to know how it was going on, what was going on behind the scenes, I can actually credit Drive to Survive for being quite good at it, because they had 2 episodes on Alpine, which for the neutral fan seems like too much. But if you're an Alpine fan, you really get to see what the hell was going on between Otmar, Bruno Famin, Laurent Rossi, Otmar being blamed for everything by Bruno and Laurent, and then Bruno comes in and he tries to take all the credit for Gasly's podium in Zandvoort, when that was a very lucky call in terms of strategy. And yeah, strategy
He
calls
had
are
nothing to do with it. He had
exactly,
zero.
they're lucky in nature, right? But he was so happy with it, and because it was the first race after Bruno Fama became basically team principal, I think he
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, this shows that the new culture I have instilled in Alpine is showing, and I want Ocon and Gasly to get along together." And I was just there like, honestly, thank you, Drive to Survive, for this one, because it just makes me realize even more how much of a mess it is. And by the way, I'm plugging my channel. Go check my Drive to Survive edits. I watched 10 episodes inside 12 hours to make edits for people who don't want to watch it. So there you go.
Yeah. Actually, a question to both of you. How many subscribers does the Alpine YouTube channel have?
Well, actually, from my time of supporting Alpine when Alonso was there, I remember they didn't do any PR thing at all. You have Ferrari who would do their C squared challenge every other day, which is too much. I remember Alonso and Ocon didn't have anything, so I'm guessing like 100,000.
Peter?
I was going to say less because I don't know. I can't remember if there's actually an official Alpine channel. There's a Renault Sport
That is also
channel.
another thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I think I know that like McLaren, for obvious reasons, has like over 1 million subscribers, and Ferrari, I think some of the other like Haas only has about 150,000. But yeah,
So what do you think? How many?
well, technically
Pick a
zero if
number.
they don't have if it's Renault
They
Sport
have
and
a
not
channel.
Alpine.
They have a channel.
75,000.
Wow. You're pretty much on the mark. It's 76,000 subscribers. That's all. And that should tell you something about the entire operation. I mean, Haas has close to 120, 130K, and that was what kind of it stands out. It shows how unserious the entire operation is. Yeah.
Hmm.
it's incredible if Alpine actually had the pace that some people have predicted it to be watching the telemetry. We have to also address, I guess, VCARB quickly, because as much as the upper midfield, I think it's just hard to predict. So I'm not sure it's really worth it. It's really a matter of seeing what happens in Bahrain. VCARB have big expectations. They're meant to be using some kind of old spec of Red Bull, or a lot of their components, which is weird for this team that wanted to become independent and stray away from their big brothers. And apparently, they are going to be in that upper midfield fighting for podiums. And we might see Danny Rick make Netflix's pleasure for season 7 by making a few podiums again.
I mean, Toro Rosso, they have a car that looks like a Formula One car, so that's a good start. Although by painting the entire thing, I'm sure that will cost them about 10 seconds a lap. That seems to be what we're led to believe these days. But I mean, yeah, to be honest, it's no secret that, as the B team to Red Bull, they're still getting assistance, whether or not they're just being handed blueprints under the table. And it's just going to copy the Red Bull. But they've obviously got a bit of an advantage over the other teams who are all just trying to copy Red Bull now. And again, a good lineup because, Danny Rick, I mean, he's still just about has it, I think. Tsunoda is improving. I mean, Mexico really damaged things last year, but he's getting better, but he's not like Red Bull Max's number 2 better yet. I mean, I'd like to see that just because I want to see a Japanese driver get given a decent car for once, and get a few podiums and possibly a win, but he's not really going to perform particularly well in that position. But then the whole point of the team is to be that junior team that gives you the stepping stone to Red Bull, and that's where they seem to be losing their way a bit because they're trying that with Ricciardo, but he's not a junior, and he's done that already 10 years ago. And whereas Tsunoda is sort of a junior that's now going into his 4th season, and it's like if you were going to move him up, you would have done it by now. So it does seem to have it's less it's less become a B team and more like a sort of wingman team that's just there so that they've got Red Bull are running 4 cars in a race instead of 2. That's how it seems
Mm.
now.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. At least for from whatever I've been able to analyze from the lap times and everything, whichever I got a hold of, it does appear that for now, what should I even call this thing? Racing Bull. Let's just call it Toro Rosso. I think Peter nailed that.
Mm.
So I think they are sixth at the moment. They are in their own little. They're basically in the island that Alpine was in 2023, where it's not
Yep.
fast enough to compete with the top five, and not slow enough to actually fall below that particular level. So I think that's where they are starting. Where they end up is an entirely different question, because it does appear, at least for now, that the team is being revamped from the kind of, you can say, the kind of objective there was for Toro Rosso or Alpha Tauri earlier was to be the sister team or to be the feeding ground for Red Bull Juniors. I think it's starting to move away from it, because since the entire, I think we might even touch on it, the whole shenanigans, the political shenanigans that are going on in Red Bull. I think one of the key changes that have happened since Dietrich Mateschitz died is the new guy, Oliver Minchloff, I think that's his name. When he replaced Dietrich, the thing that he's looking at is he's looking at these specific teams as separate, you can say separate source of revenue. And for a long time, Toro Rosso was leaking money and not really giving that kind of trade-off that you can expect from a particular investment. So that's what Red Bull might do. They might try to maximize both these squads. So Red Bull Racing would do its bit, and the second team will try to get maximum whatever it is possible with the kind of with limited investment, but probably being more smart, by taking up as many parts as possible from Red Bull and having the best possible driver. That's why Daniel is there. So yeah, for now, I think it will be P6. That's where the starting point is. Where it can go, I think we'll have to wait, because people like Lauren Mackeys, he's also joined now Racing Bull. So let's see what happens with him. There are the team. If the team finishes P6 or above, I don't think I'll be surprised.
It's interesting how much there is to say about Red Bull or the Red Bull family in an era where all you all you can say on the surface is they are very good and they're dominating the sport. One of the things they have done actually to maybe switch up things is that rumor that they might be going to zero pods as from some point in the season, especially as it seems, at least to fans. I don't think on an engineering standpoint that is the reason, but to fans, it just seems like they're trying to teabag Merck, if I can say so. It's just them being like, "Oh, look at us! We can use report, and we're gonna beat you with your own kind of design."
I think that's I think at the end of the day, there was something that Adrian spoke about very early when Mercedes had actually launched. I think many people forgot what were the first reaction from almost every designer when Mercedes first launched the Zero Pod in 2022. The first reaction was trepidation, because everyone had seen this concept and everyone thought they would not be able to make it work. And when Mercedes had that concept on, everyone was alarmed that maybe Mercedes had actually found a way to make it work. Now we all know how it turned out, but since last 2 years, Adrian has gained the knowledge, and right now he's actually at a situation where he can ultimately experiment with something like this. What Adrian is trying to do is he's trying to find different avenues to gain more lap time, because at the end of the day, these regulations are quite prescriptive, and it's tough to gain lap time, and it does appear that it might work. Adrian, when things work for Newey's way, he does not fail often. There are times when I think everyone forgets that while Newey has his years of brilliance, there have been years where he's pretty much away from the spotlight as well. From 2014 till 2020, you can say they weren't the best New Years either. Or even you can go.
Ciaron brings up 2004 car as well, the 2004 McLaren, which was
Yeah, that was a piece of shit, to
mid.
be honest. It was
Yeah.
garbage, and they had to change the car. And in 2003, Kimi basically fought the title with an year-old car. They continued to revamp it because they felt that maybe it wasn't extracted as well as it should have been. So Newey has his bad years. Right now, what he's doing is he's in the groove. He has everything that he needs, and not good signs for the rest of the grid, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean it's a interesting design. I mean, when I first saw the pictures of the side pod, because people would take the image and they would try and lighten it up to so you could actually see what was going on. The first thing it made me think of was actually the old Benetton side pods in like 94, 95, because they had this like very narrow vertical slit, and that's kind of what he's gone for now, where typically it's a very wide kind of side pod inlet, or even 2011 McLaren had that like L-shaped one. So I looked at it because it has that narrow slit, but then it's also very narrow at the top. And I was thinking, it's almost as if it looks like a Venturi tunnel on top of the car. It's like he's found a way of
Yeah.
ground affecting the cooling system to accelerate the air, even and maybe aid in cooling. And maybe that's the idea, that there's a sort of hidden Venturi tunnel used not for downforce but for cooling purposes. I don't
I
know.
think that's what James Allison was touching on as well, right? He specifically talked about how he wanted, if he had a chance, he would take the engine cover off the Red Bull and see how the entire cooling operations are being done, because the concept seems very interesting.
Yeah, fully agree. And this was all about on-track action. Last thing about the Formula One section of this preview. Let's talk a bit about off-track squabbles. You spoke about political shenanigans. You mentioned political shenanigans earlier, Casual. That was for Red Bull, but even in terms of the greater part of Formula One, there have been some squabbles between the FIA and FOM recently. And that's not something that Formula One is stranger to. It happened in the 80s with the FISA-FOCA war, in 2009 with the whole FOTA trying to maybe break away into their own sport. Where do we think, quite succinctly, I guess, because it's hard to predict, but where do you think we're going with this dispute? Is there going to be a fallout? Are they all going to sort out something? What do you think, Peter?
Um, it's hard to say really, because the opposition. I mean, the one in 2009 that kind of went over my head at the time, and I didn't realize how serious it got, and the threats of making a breakaway series.
Yeah.
A similar thing also happened around 2004, 2005. There was an attempt to even break away. So we're always getting these kind of disputes, but then you get. I feel like the fans are a lot more vocal when it comes to objections over how things are run in terms of calendar or just regulation stifling things, or is it the drivers don't. You could tell that when they have a bit of opposition to rules, but they don't really speak up enough. And I feel like there's not. If they really wanted things to change, they would start being more vocal, or they would start boycotting races like they used to do back in the past. Even if most of the time that was done for safety purposes. So it's yeah. I mean, we get Max complains sometimes because he says the races are too long, or that there are too many races in a year and it's a bit exhausting. And it's like, and again, we have to think about the drivers as well. There is also the mechanics; they're the ones having to travel a lot, and in many respects, they have to work harder than the drivers because they're the ones that if they smash the car, they have to spend all night fixing it, and they become the sort of unsung heroes in that. But there's just not. It would need more of a united front, I think, against Domenicali, and to actually make meaningful change in that way. And at the moment, there aren't enough drivers speaking up kind of sternly enough.
Okay. I think it's basically a two-part question you asked, Nav. The first part is whether we see FIA and FOM breaking up. I don't think that's going to happen, because look, what the basic trump card that FIA has is the legal right to have Formula One. Formula One can only be run by the FIA. So while FOM can think of, they can entertain having a different series or things like that, but the kind of brand equity that comes from the F1 trademark, it's, I think that holds a lot. And even right now, Liberty is smart enough to know that. What I'm slightly worried about is where where are the owners truly trying to take the sport? Is this a case of Liberty trying to max out, basically take, extract as much juice as it can from this product and then sell it off to the highest bidder? Is that where the sport is heading right now? Because the kind of actions that it has taken, there are a lot of red flags on that front. That is what I'm worried about. Look, FIA and FM, they can squabble as much as they want. MBS, Mohammed Ben Salam, he's what one can call, he's an inconvenience that will be there, but he hardly has any power, and he'll come up and he'll say a couple of things, but it's not going to, have any meaningful impact on that front. And why drivers don't speak at the end of the day, if you are being paid a million a week, you'll only speak so much. You'll have only so many complaints. You know, money talks. That's the bottom line of the entire thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, even as much as, and people will say this they'll say, because they'll say to Max and stuff, oh, you're complaining this much about having to work X amount of weeks a year, and it's like, yeah, but look at your salary. I think you can, I think you could. There's not much room to complain about.
Yeah.
Yes, constant traveling, constant jet lag, also having to work out and stay on your diet and your fitness constantly when you're being paid that much money, even if it means you only get a couple of months off a year, which actually is still more than most other people get, to be honest.
Yeah.
In a regular job.
Max made around 75 million last year. 75 or 70, something like that. 45 plus 25 or 45 plus 30, whatever that was. That's more than, I think it's more than a million a week. Roughly 1.4 million a week. That's what he made. And I think Lewis is going to make 100 million. So that will, with Ferrari. So that will be 2 million a week. When you're getting that kind of money, yeah, you might complain right now. Everyone is a smart businessman in Formula One. They know, even though they'll complain about the direction the Formula One is going and everything else, they know very well that these are the years they're going to bank on. Anyone can ask, if any driver has harbored any thoughts of retiring, all they need to do is they need to go back, give Nico Rosberg a call, and he'll let you know how much money he left on the table when he actually retired so abruptly. I think he's talked about how around 100 to 150 million dollars is what he left on the table, and that's not a smart business proposition in any which way.
Yeah, what I think is all of these issues, they might not be impacting current drivers as much, because I feel like even if there's a breakaway series or if something changes, the best drivers are the best drivers. Whichever series happen will want Lewis Hamilton, will want Leclerc, will want Norris, will want
Yeah.
Verstappen. What I think is a bigger issue is for the feeder series, actually. So the younger drivers, if they see these issues happening, they might not really know what to do. They might not really know. They might not really know where to go, and they might not be getting the best advice as well, because, as you said, there's a lot of money involved. There's Formula Two, Formula Three drivers. A lot of them do not have money. As much as we talk about the pay drivers, a lot of them who are actually very good need sponsors, need funding, and if there's a breakaway series or if there's some uh, dispute going on, they're the ones who might be caught in the cyclone. And actually, that leads us to our Formula 2 preview, because this year, Formula 2 is extremely interesting, not least because of the two phenomenons that are Kimi Antonelli and Oliver Bearman. We have heard a lot about them recently. One's a Merck Junior, the other one's a Ferrari Junior. And obviously, we will talk about them. But what I have been thinking is, there are one or two other seats, I would say, that are fully up for grabs, and that hasn't happened in a lot of time. I think Antonelli is getting a seat at some point for sure. Bearman is going to get seat at some point for sure. Liam Lawson, if someone thinks he's not there in 2025, something very wrong has gone on. But I still think somewhere, especially with all the contracts expiring, there is a seat that might be completely up for grabs. And that's when some drivers like Victor Martins come into play, Gabriel Bortoleto, um, Ritomo Miyata, how will he fare coming on from the Japanese scene? Kushmaini, he's not on the same level for now, at least in the eyes of the public, but he has been his endeavor for towards Formula 2 has been incredible. So Alpine Academy, Mika Hakkinen as a mentor, a lot of PR appearances recently. Yeah, those four are my standouts in terms of interest behind the obvious ones that are Antonelli and Bearman.
I think I'm slightly confused by the hype that Ollie Bearman gets and Victor Martins does not. I
Mm.
mean, because the last couple of years, both drivers have somewhat graduated together. It's not okay. I agree. Bearman is younger, and when he drives, you can see the kind of talent that he has. I mean, there are shades of Max Verstappen in wheel-to-wheel combat, and I don't say that often about other drivers. They're clearly there, but still, I think in terms of results and everything, Martins has maybe produced better ones. And somewhere, that does raise a red flag for me that I agree. There's a lot of winning that Beerman has done. Martins has done as well, but somehow the hype and results, there's a bit of a mismatch, I feel.
Yeah, Victor Martins does a thing. He is extremely fast, but he's very rough around the edges. Last year, he was getting involved in a lot of unnecessary crushes or just issues, but those can be polished out into a very fast driver, in my opinion. Especially because, as you said, the main issue with him is that he's 22. And
Yeah.
Formula One has become this thing where if you're not at a certain level at the age of 20, you're not making it. Victor Martinez is 22 in Formula 2 because he actually did not have enough funding to do Formula 3. He was doing extremely well in the French Junior Series, but there was an issue. It's that Theo Pourchaire was also doing very well. And
Yeah.
some other good French drivers were doing well, like Ocon and Gasly. So FFSA, which is the French Federation, they just didn't fund him enough at the time. And that's why Martins is 22. So when you talk about the age of a driver, people just try to assume it's always because they didn't do well enough to graduate fast enough. That was never the case with Martins. He was always on pace. And if we just look at the standings from last year, first place, Porsche, he's gone to Super Formula. Vesti, second place, he's a reserve driver. Third place, Duan, he's a reserve driver.
He's
And
also a
fourth place,
reserve driver, yeah.
Iwasa, yeah. And fourth place, Iwasa, he's also gone to Japan.
Yeah.
So if you just look at the order, the next one in line is Victor Martins.
No, that's true. That's true. But again, Formula 2 is very unpredictable. I mean, I think last season, either of the top three, in my view, could have won the championship if they, I mean, I often say it, if they had a better astrologer or someone who could actually impart them some different kind of luck, because that's what it came down to be honest. The qualifying session, I still think it's not optimum for Formula 2, and there's too much luck involved. And that played a major role in quite a few races, and somewhere I feel the format needs a bit of changing, a bit of you can say some tweaks here and there, so that it becomes a bit more proof. There's not It should not have this much fortune playing a role. So that is one thing. Other than that, I think, look, there are a lot of things that work for Victor Martins, but somewhere you have to ask yourself that at 22 years of age, he should be more polished as well. And what I do is I compare Victor Martins with the Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan is 20, and he was, I think, was runner up in Formula 3, and then he graduated to Formula 2. He's beaten Martins as well, and he has probably lesser years of racing under him. And maybe that's why Alpine tend to rate him higher than Martins. So again, question marks. There are a lot of question marks. I think at the end of the day, what we need to truly hope is that this is the first season with the new cars. hope the cars are reliable, hope whatever results that we have, they're basically on the basis of merit, not luck. Because a lot of championships they tend to get dictated by this.
Yeah, I mean, it is annoying with Formula 2 because the cars. I mean, now they've got cars which actually match the Formula 1 cars in terms of their design. So they've got the ground effects and they've got those weird, like, handlebar, like pull-up handlebar rear wings and that. But looking at the previous gen, they look like absolute arse to drive. The tires never seem to work, and pole basically goes to whoever is the last person to get out at the end of it. But yeah, so many people were being wrecked because they were getting mecha chromed, as it was called, because the engines would just blow up for no reason on some cars and not others. And that was having a huge effect because it's like, okay, even if teams might say that, okay, we understand that's not your fault, that's not driver error. If it's costing you points, it's costing you super license points, and there's
Yeah.
nothing that can be done about that. They can't just hand you 50 free ones to compensate as insurance for having all those engine failures. But there is also a kind of problem of just inconsistency, and we had this last year that you look at Pourchaire's record and you think, how did he win the title and by such a margin? Because he got, I think, 2 wins and Vesti got 6. And some of the results that came from other people, like Bearman, felt strong all season. And there was Azerbaijan where he won both races, and then was like, oh, he's this generational talent. And then he finished 6th or 7th in the standings and got
Yeah.
nowhere near the title at the end. It was just one of these years where it was like whoever won it was, as I've said before, not the best driver, but the least worst. Is how it felt,
Yeah.
and that's how it is with Formula E basically every year. And now, but this year is exciting because we do have such a stacked grid. There are a lot of very interesting drivers in there. It's just annoying for me that I feel like at best one of them will get a seat in Formula One next year.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
don't see any. Go ahead.
I agree. Especially because this year in Formula 2, we have a lot of talent on there, that's for sure. But what I love about this grid is you also have your typical Formula 2 nutcases at the back. So Rafael Villagomez got promoted from Formula 3 after spending 2 seasons and finishing both seasons in 25th, which is lower than you could have finished when HRT was in Formula 1. Amorico Odile is back for a 3rd season. Again, best finish of 17th in the standings the last 2 seasons. Joshua Dirksen from Paraguay, very South American name there. He's also making the jump from European Formula Regional to Formula 2. And that's the thing, right? It's fun to know, but you just know that
Is Roy Nisani
it's
still there?
No, he's
I've been
gone.
little.
Actually, I think apparently he might be doing national service or conscription in Israel,
Oh
which
yeah.
is an interesting
punishment.
issue. Yeah, but no, he's not there, and that's kind of gone under the rug kind of quietly.
Yeah.
Ralph Boschung
Surprisingly.
has retired completely from racing now, actually, because he's been doing Formula 2 for 6 years. Last year,
Yeah.
he dominated the first weekend and then just vanished for the rest of the season. And then he said, okay, I'm leaving Formula 2, and then like 5 minutes later, he sent out another tweet. He's like, oh yeah, I'm not racing at all anymore. It's like, okay. But yeah, he was just another a better journeyman than Nissani, but not a brilliant one.
Nisani was basically Maldonado without pace. That the racing awareness that he had, I almost wondered how he would do in Formula One. And of course, he'd crash a lot, but he will bring humor to the race. That's for sure.
Was it Hauger that he would have killed if there was no halo? So Nisani swerved in front of Daruvala. I think it was Spain, maybe. He swerved in front of Daruvala. Then the car goes airborne and is like dilly dallying airborne and just kind of bouncing, and then it just like hits the halo of I think Hauger. And it's the fact, people just brushed it aside because nothing happened in the end. Without a halo, Hauger is dead by a wheel in the face. It's insane. So, yeah, my point about those pay drivers is that it seems like there are no Nissanis and the other drivers are just slow, the ones I mentioned. But bringing it back to the contenders in Formula 2, those paid drivers are going to matter at some point. They are going to mess someone's race up. When you think
They do it
about,
every weekend. That's the biggest. That's why I said you have to get these qualifyings. You have to make them luck proof, because almost every bloody time, if there is even a slightly tricky condition, any of them is going to cause a red flag and screw every fast driver's lap. They do it so many times. It was so infuriating last season that I, that's why and if your fast lap in qualifying is screwed, you're done for the weekend. There's no way you can actually gain those positions, because again, apparently these cars even are not that good at overtaking. The tires are as fragile as they get. It's like, what are we even doing?
Mm.
So yeah.
yeah, Peter was talking about how Vesti won 6 races and wasn't champion. That's because in Monza, Vesti was
Yeah.
fifth or sixth, and if he finished fifth or sixth, then he goes, I think, into the season finale with on level with Porsche, if not a few points ahead. And it's
Yeah.
very likely that he wins the title. But Stanek isn't a bad driver; he's just a bit subpar in Formula 2. Stanek just, I think, he just sends Vesti into the wall just before Lesmo won. And you're there wondering, those are prospective Formula One drivers' careers just getting ruined by the most random incidents where you have nothing, where there's nothing you can do. So yes, you might not be getting mecha chromed like before, but you just know that's the thing with Formula 2 previews. You make all those predictions, and then the best driver might just be sent into a wall, or the engine just goes off. Might start raining, and they have no idea what to do.
Apparently, this happened with Doohan as well last season. For the first 5 or 6 races, there was some issue with his car, and when they had their first in-season test, that's when they found out that there was something wrong with the car. Then he comes
Mm.
back, and after the test, in the very first race, he gets a podium, and before that, he had nothing to show for. And it
And the thing
happens.
is,
No one says anything.
you can
This
see
just
that
continues to happen.
that actually happens because Duan, for example, he was so good in 2022, and then 23 for the first few races, he's nowhere. This incident happens, which usually is just a rumor and you don't think much about it, and all of a sudden he's getting poles and podiums again. It's the fact this is deciding the future F1 grid that's insane to me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
A similar thing happened with Jay Anderuvula. I think he was complaining a couple of years ago that his engine had no power, and then they put a new engine in the car and he wins the next race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They run half the season with cracked chassis before they even identify that, okay, there's something wrong with it. And then you expect and I think this was something that even Jack Crawford talked about. Jack Crawford apparently recently got released from his Red Bull, from the Red Bull Academy, and he said that one of the biggest issues with Formula 2 is, and the Red Bull Academy, that Helmut Marko, he just looks at the final result. That's the only thing he does. He is not present in the paddock, and he does not pay the entire attention that needs to be done. That why you have X or Y as a result. And that's just not the right way to go about it, but that's how things get decided apparently.
This happened before, again with Red Bull. I think it was with Dan Ticktum, him and Pato O'Ward doing Super Formula. That Ticktum did that as a Red Bull junior around 2017, 2018. He crashed in one of the races. It cracked the chassis. They never fixed it. His results didn't improve. And then I think they got rid of him and he got dropped from the academy. And then they put Pato O'Ward in that car and it was no better. And then he lasted like 2 races or something. It's something like that. I'm probably getting it wrong somewhere, but that's definitely been a case of, sometimes the car is just broken. And like Formula 2, if all the cars were literally the same, it would be so much closer. But I think the issue of backmarker drivers kind of getting in the way and fucking things up. In Formula 2, it's not so much a problem. It's a massive problem in Formula 3. I mean, the bottom 10 drivers just shouldn't be there. They're a complete waste of space. Because even like Alessio De Leda, that was a fun ride when he jumped up to Formula 2. To be fair, okay, he was extremely slow, but he never caused any accidents with anyone, and he mostly got out of people's way. There are some drivers that are just more destructive
Josh Mason, he
than
was the
others.
same. I'll see.
Who? Sorry.
Josh
Josh
Mason, the
Mason.
guy
Oh
who
yeah,
was just at the back, didn't cause any crush,
just didn't
just
Existed.
do
drove around.
anything. It just gets depressing because I always root for them, and I'm like, come on, do something, and then you just see them drifting further and further back, and you're like, you may as well not be there if you can't even keep up with the tail end and just running around by
Yeah.
yourself. The other thing I think they really need to fix is stalling. The cars stall all the time, and it
fucking
drives
much.
me nuts. Like we've seen this. I mean, because I was really a couple of years ago, I really like Kalen Williams, the Aussie driver who's doing BMWs now or something, and he went up to Formula 2. The one race where he got to start from pole and the car stalls, and he's at the back before the race has even started. And every single time they spin, if you so much as look at first gear, the engine just switches off and you can't restart it. Why don't they have some kind of anti-stall mechanism? Because Formula One cars almost never stall now, even when
Yeah.
they spin. But Formula Two, every time you spin, the car stalls and you're out. Like they have
I'll
to
never
fix
get
that.
that. Yeah. And maybe have the cars. Maybe they should not be this horrible to handle anymore. I mean, from it's been 2018 when when first time they actually moved on from the conventional cars to the turbo hybrids, and since then all these cars they handle so poorly. They don't really look good. The onboards are just poor. The drivers continuously is going like this. The car is too. It's not as fun as the last time, I think, in 2017 when Leclerc won the title. Those cars were on edge. They were ragged, but they were great to look at. These just squirm like anything. I don't know. I
It's
don't really
funny you
see them
guys have
getting better
mentioned.
actually this season.
Yeah, agree with you. It's funny you guys have mentioned spec series. You've mentioned drivability. You've mentioned competition on those grids and how disciplined they are with the cars actually working. This all screams one thing to me. It's what will Ritomo Miyata think of this? It's extremely exciting to have Miyata moving from Japan as a double, what they call a double winner there, which is GT 500 and Super Formula.
Yeah.
He's used to drivers that can handle. He's used to very high competition. There's Kamui Kobayashi still racing in there, for example.
Yeah.
He's used to all of this, and he's getting into a field. Yeah, he's joining a field where drivers are, I think, in average, the best drivers who will race around him are 5 years younger than him, less experience, less maturity,
Yeah.
and I just wonder what's gonna happen to him, really.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else is obsessing over Kimi Antonelli. I'm obsessing over Miyata. I mean, I always
Yeah.
ship like Japanese drivers and that, but the thing is, I think some people maybe don't quite get is that Super Formula, that's not a feeder series. That's a professional series in its own right. That's just in a
Yeah.
different branch to like Formula One and everything. So he's not a junior. He's already a professional
faster than
driver,
Formula
and
Two.
he's
It's
won the
faster than Formula.
yeah, I know. It's the thing. He's got the double whammy of winning that and Super GT. So he's obviously adaptable because you have to be able to drive single seaters and then essentially touring cars is what Super GT is.
Yeah.
I think it might be a bit of a shock for him probably because I don't know how much racing he's done in Europe. It's often, I mean, all Japanese drivers is something they have to adjust to as juniors is when they join the European racing scene. But also the cars are going to handle very differently. The tires are probably going to behave very differently. The team environment, everything is going to be a huge change, and it's just how can he adapt to that. But it's a very, very interesting experiment. Assuming the intention of this is that he wants to see if he can try and get a Formula One seat instead of just spending his whole career in Japan, which again would be very left field because that's something because if we're supposed to be looking at just all the junior academy drivers, that suddenly someone else might come in and do it the old-fashioned way. We'd have to see though, because I mentioned Passo before because that one weekend he did in 2019 in Formula 2, he was covering for Mahavir Raghunathan after he got a race ban. He did that and he just wasn't interested in coming back because he was like, these cars are terrible. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go back to IndyCar. So I don't see how he'd be that impressed. I mean, these are entirely new cars and they obviously look like the modern F1 cars. The previous generation of Formula 2 cars, they looked and handled like the narrow body hybrids of 2014 to 16, where a lot of power but just absolutely no grip and no torque at the rear. So hopefully these ones work a bit better, unless we're going to have to go through porpoising being a problem, which they haven't
just
fixed yet or whatever.
I just checked Miyata's races. He has never raced outside of East Asia, apart from a few weeks ago at Daytona. So he raced at Daytona in the GT category in a Lexus, and he's also doing European Le Mans this year. So he's he's trying out a lot of things, and obviously he
That
wants
is with
to.
Toyota, right? He's affiliated with
What,
Toyota.
European Le
Miyata.
Mans?
I can picture him wearing a Toyota shirt, so I think it is.
No, he's doing it with LMP2, so it's just Oreca which does its LMP2 things.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Toyota
that's
Gazoo
the
Racing apparently.
he
The
is a Toyota driver there, so he will be wearing the overalls. But yeah, it's he obviously wants to make it to a global scene, and I just hope he doesn't just flop like some of the other Asian drivers who have tried to get out of the Asian scene.
I mean
I think
that's
it
really
does appear. Yeah, go ahead.
that's really interesting actually, because even Yuji Ide had experience racing in Europe. He'd done a season in French Formula 3, otherwise only in Japan. But yeah, to have someone who's never raced in Europe before, that is going to be a big change for him.
Yeah, I think he might be angling in the long term towards that Aston Martin seat. This might what it appears is because last season when he beat Lawson, and look at it again, Lawson got the entire hype from his entire campaign in Super Formula and in Formula One, but Miyata did well compared to an F1 driver who many rate very highly. So there is that certain angle that is being played because at least for now, what it does appear is Yuki is good, but he's not a driver that is capable enough, at least for now. Maybe he changes my mind this season, but he's not someone who's shown that capability and that maturity to be in a car that can fight for a title or fight for wins and podiums consecutively. I don't see that in Yuki until now. And last season, what Miyata did when he beat Lawson, there seems to be a certain level of hype around him in Japan, and either it is Toyota angling a move to Formula One through him, or it is Honda just testing him, maybe backing him through Formula 2 to see where it stands and then get those super license points. I think if that is a concern for him, and maybe ultimately in future angle him to a seat in Aston Martin in 2026 when he finally comes back. Finally, if he shows that he's good enough, there might be a case that this is the entire path that he's actually on.
We're going to have to see how fast he adapts, right? Because he is a rookie, and there are quite a few rookies this year which have graduated from Formula 3. So Pepe Marti and Taylor Barnard. One who hasn't graduated, and that leads us to our Formula 3 preview, is Gabriele Mini, for instance, who was very highly touted, but finds himself a bit stuck in, not stuck, but at least for this year, he has to redo his year in Formula 3 while a lot of the other talents have graduated. And again, Formula 3, it's the good old drama who has some incredible lineup. Dino Beganovic, Gabriele Mini, and Arvid Lindblad, three of probably the most prospective talents right now, especially for their age. I can see Casual just squinting a bit.
Uh, I'm no, I think they're good. I don't really look. I've seen a bit. I've heard a bit of Lindblad. I'm. I want to see how Solov does. He's the one that Alonso has been backing, right? And he's been backing him
Yeah.
for some time. I don't know exactly how good he is, but if Alonso is putting his brand behind someone, there might be something to that. And secondly, Stenhorn is someone that I'm a bit interested in seeing how he does because last season in Freca, he was leading the championship for the first 2 3 races against Antonelli before Antonelli took over, and I mean he just went on a run. So these are the two guys that I don't know how good they will be, to be honest, but they might be someone who I actually want to see how they do.
I agree with you on Stenson because, as we know, Antonelli gets extensive testing. He's very good. There's no denying that. He gets a lot of private testing. He gets access to simulators all over the place. So for Stenson to come with what is limited backing, from what I know, and to just put up a fight is very impressive. The other standout is Alex Dunn, who finally managed to garner some Formula 3 backing to join MP Motorsport. And his junior record is stellar as far as the UK is concerned. So 2022 won British F4, 2022 also second in Italian F4 to Antonelli, and in 2023 second in GB3 as a rookie. He's only 18, and Ireland hasn't been represented in Formula One in what is it now, 22 years. So that's also another driver to look at, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting drivers, I think, in Formula 3. I mean, there are a lot of not so interesting ones that are just kind of filler and a lot I've never really heard of. But yeah, you can see several people have jumped up from Frecker. Other ones that get attention, I mean, Sebastian Montoya, he gets a lot of people talking about him. Charlie Wirtz as well. He gets some
Yeah,
attention again.
what's the deal? What's the deal with Charlie Wirtz? Why does he get so much? I mean, on Twitter X, whatever you call it, there's a lot of hype behind him. Is he
Maybe just because of
quite
who his dad
impressive?
is. Like, oh, his dad's
So
an
his
F1
dad
driver.
has put a lot of support. Yeah, his dad has put a lot of support, but also he wins a lot. The issue is that he wins championships that do not get a lot of competition. So he wins UAE F4, he wins Oceania Formula Regional. So he wins things, and I guess that's what matters when you're a junior. But it's not like he's winning Freca or stuff like that.
I guess this year will show how good he is. Ultimately, it comes down to that.
Mm. But there's a couple of others, I suppose. So a lot of people seem to like Tim Tramnitz. Kasper Stuka, he won one of the Formula 4 titles last year, and his reward is that he's another Red Bull junior. So there's another one in the queue.
For now,
For
who knows
that,
what
for
happens?
now, yeah, because there are some. I mean, like Noel Leon, he's an ex Red Bull junior. He's with VAR. Sophia Flörsch is back again. She seems to come in and
Alpine.
out of doing Formula 3. I mean, maybe she'll just give up on it, and I don't know, and just commit herself to endurance racing. Yeah, and then I mean, there aren't necessarily many like terrible teams. I think. I mean, probably the weakest lineup is PHM, which is the one that used to be. Did they used to be Charutes, or I think something like that? I mean, Piotr Wisnicki, he's come back. He basically rage quit his team and said, "Oh, they were useless and never tried to help me," and now he's come back and joined another one or something. Yeah, there's going to be the mix. I mean, we're going to have a year where the bottom 10 are so invisible that their names don't even appear on the live timings because they can't fit 30 drivers on. And you look at it again, these are the ones more. I said this before, it's not such an issue in Formula 2. It really is a problem in Formula 3. There's always one that has to crash at the end and ruin everyone else's hot laps. And apparently, unless your name is Pepe Marti, if you qualify outside the top 20, you will never gain positions. He's the only driver that could do that last year. You just get stuck in a DRS train because you've got 30 drivers fighting for the top 10 positions in cars that don't break down enough like they did in the early 90s. It's just a mess.
This year, this year in Formula 3, I feel like as you said, the bottom 10 or bottom 15 might really be far behind because you have like 6 or 7 names which seem to be actually very good. But some of the names in here, look, Formula 3 is where you really make your name, right? You could be a nobody who just got an opportunity from some unknown Formula 4 series, or so you might have gotten funding after 2 or 3 years. But Formula 3 is very much make or break. It gives you an opportunity. So they just have to take it. But so far, just looking at the names, there are a lot of names there which, yeah, they might not be bad, but they were not exactly known before the season starts.
No, that's true. That's true. I don't know. I'm honestly, out of the three series, F1, F2, and F3, I'm kind of more psyched about Formula 2 right now, because there's at least again, Antonelli and Bearman, they are the two fresh talents that kind of bring a sense of excitement to the whole thing. Not that much in Formula 3. I mean, I expected Antonelli to go to Formula 3, but he's made the jump. So that's where we stand with him. And there aren't the guys that you tend to again. Lindblad is the name I've heard a lot. Tim Tramnitz was a name when which actually came up when I went on a rant on Twitter that Germany is completely screwed when it comes to Formula One. There's nobody. They are still banking on pretty much a retired German in Vettel and someone who's close to retiring in Hulkenberg in terms of their only German hope. So that's when someone said that Tim Tramnitz is someone who's actually rising up the ranks. Again, I wasn't impressed. I've seen very little of him, and even his record is it's okay, but not that impressive. And then there are others, but again, Formula Three is something that I'm okay. Who do you think is actually the front runner to win this time around?
One
I
of the
don't think.
one of the Prema drivers in Formula 3. I mean,
Yeah,
looking at those three, probably Beganovic, maybe because he's done at least a year already. He's a name that's been around for what feels like forever now. He's been part of Prema and the FDA since he was like 14 or 15, and he's now 19 or 20. I mean, yeah,
it's five
Prema is.
years.
Yeah, I mean, being with Prema is basically a free ticket to the championship in most seasons now. But outside of, I feel like Sebastian Montoya could threaten it. Possibly Luke Browning at high tech, because again, he's one of the Williams juniors and he seems to be getting quite a big push, even though Colapinto and Zach O'Sullivan sort of outrank him in the hierarchy of juniors at Williams. Beyond that, the others are not. They're all either rookies or they're just people who aren't good enough. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. This, especially this year, the Prema drivers. So the Beganovic and Mini, they finished sixth and seventh in the standings last year, and the top five have all gone away. So again, the logical thing would be for them to be promoted to one and two if it was that simple. Our third place is quite interesting because you get a lot of rookies like Lindblad, Dunn, and Stenson who are interesting. But you also have some returning drivers like Montoya or Tsolov who have a make or break season, especially Tsolov. There was a lot that was put on. It's his first season jumping from Spanish F4 to Formula 3. He didn't do FRECA, so that's a big jump. Apparently, it's as big a jump from a regional F4 straight to F3 than it is from FRECA to Formula 2. So basically, the jump that Antonelli is doing. So yeah, I feel like this year it's going to be quite easy to predict in terms of the top two. It should be Beganovic and Mini in some order, and that leads me to asking you guys about your predictions for Formula 2 as well, because we didn't do that before we do Formula 1 to round it off. Who do you think is going to be your top three for Formula 2? Which again is one of the most random and just uneducated guesses anyone could ever make. Because
Because
last
Kimi
year,
Antonelli has not done a single qualifying session, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there was that thing, weren't they, saying, oh, they claimed there was some test and he was like 4 seconds faster than everyone else in the wet. And it's like,
In
nobody
the
is.
West,
that
yeah.
was
It's like nobody
Marquis.
is 4 seconds faster than anyone in the wet. And everyone's saying he's getting the sort of British press treatment where they hype them up so much that as soon as they don't meet that standards, then everyone destroys them and they become like that tennis player, that girl that keeps pulling out of everything. Yeah, Emma Raducanu, basically, because of her mental health has been wrecked because we can't have nice things in this country. They have to ruin it when it comes to tennis. And that's what's happened with her. And I think that's what's going to happen with him, is that everyone's decided he's the chosen one, and the next he's the messiah for Italians or whatever. And that's just going to ruin it and he's going to falter. But I don't know about top three, to be honest. I kind of think for me, I think Colapinto's going to do well. I'm going to throw in Miyata just because of his age and experience. Maybe
Surely you put a
Martins?
Prema driver there. Surely you put a Prema driver
I guess
there.
Bearman, but the thing is that he was kind of good last year, but it just didn't he finished sixth, even though he was actually one of the most consistent drivers when you look at his results in terms of getting a lot of points in most races, and it just didn't work for some reason. When Teo
That's the
Porcher
thing.
had several races where
Yeah.
he was useless and still won the title.
That's the thing with
makes
Formula
me
2 this year. It's that
it makes
one
me
of
actually.
all the drivers we mentioned is going to finish eighth or seventh.
Okay, I'll take the punt. I'll be the hopeful. I think Kimi Antonelli wins. I'll go with it. I'll go with the hype. Because the thing is, look, in Freca, I specifically for the first time in my life I followed Freca, and yeah, he was good, but it's not as if the way Ollie Bearman stands out in terms of wheel to wheel action, Kimi Antonelli does not. In terms of the vicious ruthlessness that that we saw in Michael Schumacher, that we saw in Max. We saw a bit of it in Lewis as well at the start in 2007, 2008. You see a bit of that in Bearman. You see a bit more of precision, a bit of a demure attitude, and again, spectacular pace, no doubt about it. But that's what you see in Kimi, and I don't know if I'll go with the hype. I think Kimi Antonelli wins, and if he does, I think what great prospect for Formula One as well.
I mean, for me, I'm still a bit skeptical of him. I mean, a lot of people watched the final round of Frecker, which was at Zandvoort, and he had his his Donington '93 moment where he went from eighth to first in like a lap or
Yeah,
something. But the thing is, for me, Frecker is not much of a litmus test because you think Formula 3 is bad. Just look at the Frecker grids. I mean, you get a lot of genuine amateurs in there, and half the drivers don't even have their own Wikipedia article as well. It's not yeah, it's not brilliant. I get, for a lot of them, it probably is. It might be their first single season series unless they've done some Formula 4 thing before it. But
yeah.
it was made fit because it was him and Stenshorn. It's like, who else is really that good from Frecker last year?
Yeah,
Like, there's
that's true. The only these two were again my whole thing. It stems from again whatever I read. I read earlier a long time back that Kimi Antonelli was actually brought in to test in the Ferrari simulator. I think I've talked about it here as well. And apparently he was quicker than even Charles Leclerc at the time in 2019 or 20, something like that. And at that point in time, Ferrari was not willing to invest anymore. The great Mattia Binotto took a he opted against doing that, and Mercedes scooped in, picked him up, and here we are. They don't. The great Italian hope will be driving for the German team. And again, look, Mark Hughes is not someone who tends to waffle a lot. He's not the one who comes up with garbage. So when he's coming up and saying things like that, okay, this kid is highly rated, I think I'll take his word, at least for now,
I
until
find
he
that
screws up
I
in the
find that
first
very
race.
hard to believe if we're supposed to assume that in 2019, when he would have been 13 years old, that he was beating an actual F1 driver on the simulator. Like,
Yeah.
that's not. I can't.
I don't know the exact year, 1920, whatever it was. It was a bit like
Well, that's
what
before he went
happened
into
was,
single seaters either way.
yeah, he was
So
Yeah.
karting at that
I
point
don't I
in
don't
time.
buy that. That's
Yeah,
not possible.
see, that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the kind of rumors that I've heard, and I don't think I've heard these many rumors for anyone other than Max. And this level of hype, I've not heard from anyone else for any other driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen this hype for a junior driver, at least from the time I've been watching, and that includes Piastri, who actually was winning every single thing coming up. I don't know if it's because he wasn't Italian or if he didn't get the same PR attention, but Piastri was actually winning. What was it, Freca, F3, F2 in a row, and he didn't have as much hype as Antonelli. So that's insane. My
Yeah,
top
but in
three.
Piastri's, sorry, yeah, but in Piastri's case, one bad day, if his final race sucked in both in Formula 3, he would have lost. He would have lost to Logan Sargent. So that's what has, the hype around Piastri, it became true when he started performing in McLaren, because before that what had happened was he had won the championships before that, but until Formula 2 he had not really stamped his authority on the entire field. There was a bit of there's a bit of a push and pull between him and even Pocher and Sargent in Formula 3, where it could have gone to anyone else. Now you compare that with Russell, who pretty much dominated in I think in it was GP3 and Formula 2, while it was even for Leclerc as well, who was quite dominant. I think he swept the entire field in Formula 2 before he came up. So that was something that was missing from Piastri. But yes, again, he's brilliant. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I agree because I followed Formula 3 in 2020, and yeah, Sargent got taken out. I remember by oh no, it's that German driver. Yeah, but he got taken out in turn one of the season finale, and there's
Was
a
it David Schumacher
timeline.
who took him out?
No, it wasn't David Schumacher. It was a guy who made it to Formula 2. He has a Turkish name. Anyway, he was taken
Embolo
out
Bassi.
in Lirim Zendeli. There you go, Lirim Zendeli.
James Edgy.
Yeah. So Lirim Zendeli took him out on turn two, and there's a timeline where Sargent is Formula 3 champion and Piastri isn't, and God knows where that takes us in terms of who makes what seats. Anyway, my top three is in no order because I refuse to predict an order for Formula 2. It's Martinez, Bearman, and the third one is it's so random. It's gonna be someone like Hauger. Hauger's on his third year, and he's gonna find a way to make it to third. And it's not gonna matter to anyone, but it's gonna wreck some careers. That's what's funny in Formula Two is that you will have a third year who's gonna finish third or fourth. It's not gonna make him get any closer to Formula One. He's gonna go to LMP2 or he's gonna go to IndyCar. But the guy who finished fourth behind him, his Formula One hopes are done. And that's how cruel Formula 2 can be. And that leads us to our Formula One predictions. Again, we're not going to predict who's going to win the championship. That's stupid. But who do you think are going to be your top three performers of the year? So just like this year, a lot of people had Lewis and Alonso in the top three, even though they didn't finish top three in the standings. I guess Verstappen will be in the top three of all of ours, so we're not including him. Who will be
Yeah,
your three odds
let's not
and
include him because I mean the man sweeps every pole, everything. Just keep him away. We know he's going to
exactly,
win. Hand him the title already. Tell him to just sit home. Let everyone else race. Let's just start doing
exactly.
that.
So,
Just ignore him. I
Cargo,
mean,
who
that's what
will,
the drivers did. They in the press conferences, they were always just like in the interviews. They're like, "Oh well, we know that Max is going to win tomorrow and ruin everything." They just ignore him now.
but that's what Drive to
Yeah.
Survive did. And I'm seeing some people be like, "Oh, Drive to Survive didn't cover Verstappen winning." That's one good thing Drive to Survive has done. Every single person and their mother and their daughter knows that Verstappen has won every single race this year. If you did you watch Drive to Survive episode where it's just him winning everything and Verstappen being, his usual like funny, cocky mix of confidence? Like we know who he is.
Yeah, the thing
You
is,
can't.
there's no depth to covering a Verstappen year because look what he did was brilliant, and I think you can't take the credit away from the fact that he actually won 19 races. But the thing is, for me, still the 2021 season stands out. That's the kind of you want to see adversity, you want to see pressure, you want to see him fail and then come back and win. That's what you want to see, and that's what Netflix would ideally cover as well. This was he basically snubbed the entire grid, and what are they going to show?
Yeah, fully agree. So yeah, casual. Who do you think is going to be your top three performers this year?
So that's got nothing to do with points, right? We keep the points
Not
away,
points,
point
just in
standings and
terms
everything
of
away.
impressing. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, I'm going with I'm going with Leclerc.
Hmm.
Okay, who else? Look, I think there are going to be some very interesting battles in between the teammates. As in, I think Lois and George is going to kick off quite intensely. I think there are going to be a lot of flash points between the two, and I think now finally Toto will come to his senses and actually give the younger drivers some credit. Uh, who's going to be second and third? Wow. Okay, let's mix it up. I'll say Alonso second, Piastri third.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What about you?
I kind of feel like if the car's is as good as it was last year, Checo at least has to finish third because he still got second, even as bad as he was. Even with a charging Lewis trying to come after him towards the end of the season. But the other standouts, I think it is, Lando and Piastri are both going to stand out a lot. I'm really not expecting much more from Leclerc, just in general, to be honest. Sainz may have a point to prove because he knows he's outgoing from Ferrari. Lewis might because he's outgoing from Mercedes. Whether the car lets him, I don't know. It's just the thing. It's hard to say it's going to be much different for anyone because it's the same teams, basically the same cars, same driver lineups. It's not. It's like. It's for the rest of them. It's like, okay, Logan Sargent, he might be faster, but he's still going to be slower than Albon. And Haas will continue to be as invisible as they've always been, and the same with Sauber, whatever they're called now. It's not going to be that different, other than I think McLaren will be better. That's all I'm really saying. Because when it comes to testing, I completely ignore lap times. There's no point looking at them.
Yeah. Agreed, 100%.
The proof is in the pudding when it comes to qualifying. We're not going to see anyone's true pace until we get to Q3 on Friday. Now, the only takeaway from testing is how many laps do they complete and how often does the car blow up? Like, pace doesn't matter unless they're doing quali runs and they're 10 seconds slower than everyone else. Clearly something is wrong. But otherwise, it's like I just don't want to. That's why I paid hardly any attention to testing because there's not much to read into it, to be honest.
Yeah, I fully agree. I
But
know.
who are your top three? Did you name any?
Oh, I guess I didn't. Okay, Max, Lando, and Checo, top three.
True Max. Leave him out of the picture.
Oh, you mean as in like best drivers of the season? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, performances, not
Oh yeah,
the
my
standards.
3 drivers of the year. Okay.
Yeah.
Piastri, Alonso, and Sainz. Yeah.
Very interesting. That's very interesting that you have Sainz there and Casual had Leclerc as his top performer. Yeah, I think in my top three again, I don't like ranking first and second and third because it's so I don't trust those at all. But in no order, Piastri and Alonso for sure. And while I say that, I do think this year we might start seeing a few shades of Alonso's age because even last year we started seeing a few incidents where it wasn't, especially in quali. I think everyone knows that in quali he's lost the edge for sure, unless there are circumstances that make his skills shine. So like slightly wet conditions or slippery tracks, like in Zandvoort. But yeah, still I will still put Piastri and Alonso, and as third one, I have to put Albon or Ocon. One of those two is going to have an incredible year, and I have no idea who that will be because Albon is the obvious one when you think about the momentum he'll be covering from last year. But Ocon, I think he will realize that this is he was in his little team Endstone comfort zone for 5 years now. From 2020 to 24, he was there chilling, and he knew basically he was going to be there. He never really had to fight for a contract.
Yeah.
25, I think he has a proper shot at the Merc seat or just going up somewhere. And it would be his only attempt, very probably, in his entire career to join a top 3 team. So he will try stuff. And I know Ciaron likes Ocon just because he tries stuff. Ocon will try stuff. Will that go well or will that not go well? Whatever happens, we're going to be entertained. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest issue that comes up is with both Ocon and to an extent Hulkenberg as well is that the cars are going to be they're going to be a piece of junk, to be honest. I don't expect Haas to have a good car this season. I don't expect Ocon to have a good car this season as well. I mean last season as well, if you go back and watch which one was it? I think it was Austria. Hulkenberg was second in the sprint race and he had overtook I think it was Sergio. So he had overtook Sergio Perez to be second in the sprint race, and he did that in a Haas that finished 10th in the championship. Now, if it was a someone who was a 20-year-old or a 19-year-old rookie, you'd say that put this guy in a better car or something like this. But you don't really hear too much about it for Hulkenberg because first of all, his age is this. The age is a massive factor. Secondly, the car more often than not it tends to just either fall back down the grid because of how it is, or he does not get too many opportunities to actually show how good he can be. Similar for Ocon this season. I don't expect Alpine to do something that McLaren did last season, and which is bring a massive upgrade mid-season and suddenly catapult towards the midfield or something like that. If the car is shite, he really can't do much, to be fair.
Interesting you bring up Alpine because the last question I will have in terms of predictions is who will be the biggest, you judge it, biggest decline or biggest flop of this year. So there are some obvious candidates. You can choose drivers or teams because I know that Casual has it against Alpine for how much they disappointed us during the last few years. But there are obvious candidates. Sargent, everyone is like, okay, he has his second year now. Maybe he deserved it. Maybe he didn't. If he doesn't perform, then that's a flop because he has to. Guan Yu Zhou, he's not been bad, but he's just nowhere. So if he doesn't do anything, easy flop. Lance
He's the
Stroll,
Joshua Mason of Formula One, right?
Mm.
Does
exactly.
nothing, basically nothing.
If if Lance Stroll doesn't perform, and if Alonso gets triple his points again, what's going to happen? So yeah, who is going to be your biggest flop?
Okay, so driver or team, I can do both, right? So in terms of driver, I think it's going to be Carlos Sainz. Sorry, Peter. I think it's going to
Very
be. And I'll explain later. In terms of teams, I'm going with Alpine. Yeah, I mean that team is not going anywhere for the next 2 years. These regulations are dead for them. And look, the problem that happens is once you fall too far back, and your engineers are actually looking for a way out from your team, and you have a listless guy, Mr. Bruno Fama, who does nothing. I don't see that team doing anything better. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Anthony Joshua brings a few tenths to that car. And that team is, let's not talk about Alpine anymore. Why I think Carlos Sainz is going to be a big letdown for me, I think it has to do with momentum, and it has to do with the fact that slowly but steadily Ferrari is starting to mold its way around Leclerc. Until last season, it tried to favor both drivers, give them equal opportunities, strategies, stuff like that. It started changing a bit near the end of it, and Leclerc started edging away. And I think in 2023, sorry, 2024, we'll see the progression again. There are already reports that the car suits Leclerc more than it does Sainz. And when that happens, in terms of raw pace and talent, Leclerc is clearly ahead. And I expect him to dominate Sainz this time around. That's why, to be honest.
The thing is that Leclerc, broadly speaking, hasn't dominated Sainz that much. It's not really been that one-sided with them. And Sainz, before he started racing in the shadow of Max. Now he's doing it in the shadow of Leclerc, but he's having a lot of weekends where he is just comfortably beating him or just clearly outsmarting him, even if maybe he's not so good in quali pace. His race
Yeah.
case can be just as good, and he's someone who is able to trust himself to think of decent strategies.
Yeah.
And that, so it's not. I think he wants something to prove, because I don't know. Maybe he has something signed in the background and hasn't gone public yet. But like, the clock is ticking if he does want a good seat. And he's probably eyeing up Mercedes at this point, because he's not going to get. I doubt he's going to Red Bull, and there's nowhere else is really open to him that's a good seat.
Audi. He's going to Audi. I mean, if Audi comes to Formula One as
Yeah,
well.
because now it sounds like that may not even happen either, which is fun. In terms of flopping, I think, yeah, okay. So I think Sargent will improve, maybe not much, but Joe is just so desperately uninteresting. He's like people like Charles Leclerc or Ralph Furman or Gianmaria Bruni or people like that. They have their year or two in F1 and they just do nothing with it. And there's nothing. Maybe they have one big crash, which is what he has had, and that's what people remember them for. But it's just it's just being so desperately uninteresting. As bad as Stroll is, he's not going anywhere until Lawrence says he's going. That's the problem, because otherwise he would have disappeared a long time ago. So he's not.
Yeah, that clip I saw from Lawrence being all emotional when in DTS when Lance broke his wrist. I mean, that was one moment that I realized that Lance is not going anywhere from that Aston Martin seat.
Yeah, I mean,
No
you saw
chance.
this with him coming back in Bahrain because Felipe Drugovich, he got in trouble for liking tweets basically shitting on Stroll. It is funny that how much power that man has, because people get in so much trouble for having a go at Lance. And it's like everyone knows he is useless. Why can't we just say it and be allowed to say it? Like, because we've had like Tictum got into trouble for that. Bianca Bustamante just got in a bunch of trouble as well. Drugovich got in trouble. Like, why can't it just be acknowledged that he is not a good driver?
You can what you need to do is you need to open a YouTube channel, call it Rocket Powered Mohawk, and then go after him.
Yeah.
That's the only way you can succeed.
I mean, he's been sort of maligned and sidelined, even though he has the biggest platform of any creator, which is kind of
Yeah.
funny.
I mean, yeah, he's
Yeah,
he's talented.
In Drive to Survive, Alonso having to say, yes, the Martin is a great project because of Lawrence. And then they also have Lance, who won all the junior formulas. So they're looking towards the future. So it's
Yeah.
the fact that Alonso is saying, oh, yeah, Lance is meant to take over from what I'm doing. I'm like, how much? Because I used to hate when people would be like, oh, how much is Alonso getting paid to say these things? And I was like, no, maybe just, Alonso actually tries to be nice. But in this one, I was like, this is money. This is straight up Alonso got some. Because the other things he said was like, I felt was just Alonso motivating Alonso, right? But this one was, oh yeah, he will take over one day because he won a lot of junior Formula races. Like, there's no way Alonso believes a single word of that one. That one quote, there's no way he believes that.
That's where Lawrence is just pointing a gun at his back and is like, "That's right, keep smiling." Like that's it. It just looks like a hostage thing when they get him to say that kind of stuff. Because Stroll, you can compare him to Roy Nissany. I mean, he's less of a terrorist than Roy Nissany was, but at the same time, it's worse with him because it's Formula One matters more, and he's been hogging seats for much longer in a series that is a lot more important and well respected and everything. And I'm just so bored of him because he has his one good race every 5 years and it's like, great, here's a 100-year extension to your contract. But otherwise his personality is almost non-existent as well. He looks completely disinterested as
there's
well.
there's so much variance, so much divergence between Lawrence and Lance, because Lawrence, yeah, that man has some aura whenever he walks in. I mean, he looks like a don or something, like he owns a cartel of companies or something like that. And even in DTS you can see that when Toto talks to him, there's a certain, you can see who is the alpha in the communication, and it's not Toto, just to make it clear. And you can see that, and you don't see any of it with Lance. There's none of it. There's so much divergence between these two persons.
Lance is the archetypal billionaire dad's son. If you needed a blueprint of what a billionaire's son is, it's Lance. It's the complete antithesis to the confidence and charisma and just uh, grandeur that a billionaire have. The son is always like Lance, and that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's a kind of thing of like, if at the press conferences and they're like, so things didn't really work today, you worried about your seat, and he's just gonna be like, do you know who my father is? It's that kind of, yeah, it's one of those kind of things with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that covers everything, to be honest. Only a few days to go now. Obviously, as of recording this, 3 days, and we kick it off Bahrain. We've got Formula 1, 2, and 3, so very busy weekend for everyone. It's yeah, it'll be very interesting as ever to see. This has been what my 17th or 18th season I've watched fully now, so to see how everything goes and how accurate predictions are.
Yeah, very nice 90-minute all-in-one preview of the 3-4 feeder series. And Stay tuned, guys, because a WEC preview is coming as well, because WEC has decided to have a race at the exact same time as Formula One, and that will be fun. So, yeah, looking forward to this Saturday full of motorsport, really, just 12 hours.
Yeah. I mean, finally, Formula One is back.
Indeed. Thank you to Nav and the Casual F1 fan. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.